Joining us now is former Virginia Governor Tim Kaine. He's the Democratic nominee for the Virginia U.S. Senate seat that's being vacated by Senator Jim Webb, who is retiring. And, Governor, you're on the John Fredericks Show. Thanks for joining us today.
You bet, John. It's great to be back.
Governor, why don't we start with the new energy plan that you've released, that you're advocating. Can you share with our audience some of the key details of the what I'm going to classify as the Tim Kaine energy plan?
You bet, John. And I'm going to be in Hampton Roads today doing a meeting over at the port with the Virginia Wind Energy Consortium to talk about offshore wind possibilities, which we're very excited about. Virginia has got a lot of innovation going on. When I was governor, we put the state's first energy plan into place, and we've been doing a series of events this week to demonstrate really what we would call, the kind of all of the above. Let's use our native sources, let's make it as clean as we can, and let's make it as affordable as we can. So we've done events at one of Dominion's large coal-fired plants in Chesterfield to demonstrate the new technologies that are cleaning flue gas. We did an event in Roanoke at a wastewater treatment facility that I helped with a grant when I was governor to install a technology where they use the methane generated from the wastewater treatment process to create half the electricity to drive the plant, which brings down their electric bills and then saves their customers money. We've done events at a solar company in Richmond and at a company in Arlington that specializes in helping businesses and customers conserve energy and efficiency. The cheapest unit of energy and the cleanest one is the one that you don't use because you're more efficient. And then today we'll be talking wind energy. So really, my belief is we really have to focus on all of our resources, but with a special focus on the alternative energy industry, wind, solar, energy efficiency and conservation. Some ridicule those as not that important, but they're incredibly important, and they help people save money.
Well, without a doubt, and I think at the end of the day, it sounds like a big piece of your plan is trying to take all of the possible energy sources that we have and get them to work together in order to get the maximum result out of it, right?
That is it. And, if we do it right and innovate, we will also create jobs. So, there's a wonderful plant down in the Roanoke area. It's a GE plant that's manufacturing components for wind turbines that are being sold all across the U.S. And at the plant, they also manufacture parts for solar power fields. So, we're either going to be innovating, creating technologies and selling them to people around the world, or we're going to be letting them innovate and then buying their technologies. And I want to make sure that in this $2.3 trillion global industry that is alternative energy, that we're the innovators and we're selling our products to others.
What are the key tenets of the Tim Kaine plan to get this economy off the dime?
Yep. I would say three pillars, John. So the immediate steps to grow the economy, growth strategy. Secondly, talent strategies. And third, balance strategies, fiscal balance. On the growth side, we should be investing more in infrastructure. If we do, we hire people right away, and then we raise the platform for economic success for decades. You watch Congress, fooling around for years and years and years about transportation bills, really not doing the infrastructure investment job that's needed. If Congress or the state doesn't invest sufficiently in infrastructure, then the only way you do deals is with tolls that are too high that then put a burden on travelers. And so I really feel like infrastructure investments is a growth strategy. And the second thing is the job creators are small businesses. So let's level the playing field for small businesses. A lot of small businesses pay federal corporate income tax. GE, for example, does not. Whether it's taxes, export policies, government procurement policies, regulatory issues, we've got to really focus on who the true job creators are in their small businesses. The second strategy is the longer-term one, and it's incredibly important. We've got to be the most talented nation on earth. We're slipping in key talent measures like the percentage of adults that get degrees after high school. We were number one in the world for a very long time. We're 16th in the world now. We got to get back to number one. And then finally, we've got to balance the nation's budget the right way, not the wrong way. There's two strategies on the table right now. One says balance our budget entirely through cuts, hey, I made a lot of cuts, and I know how to make cuts, but if you balance the budget entirely through cuts, you're going to devastate the national economy, you're going to hurt Virginia, you're really going to hurt defense. And so I propose to, make cuts, make $2 or $3 of cuts for every dollar of revenue, but we need a balanced approach that includes revenue, and that's why I'm calling for the expiration of the Bush tax cuts over $500,000 in income. That will put some revenue into the situation. We do cuts as well, and then, that's the right path to balance, I believe.
Governor, President Obama made the request to Congress to extend the Bush tax cuts, but for only those earning under $200,000 or $250,000.
Right.
And then what you just outlined is you're saying it should be under $500,000.
Yep.
What is really the difference?
Well, the difference is, I would say, John, it's practical, not theological. So here's the competing plans. The president says, let the tax cuts expire for everybody over $250,000. The Republicans say, let all the tax cuts be permanent. Those are two positions where folks are dug in. The Senate passed the $250,000 version this week. It's going nowhere in the House. The House passed the make all the tax cuts permanent this week. That's going nowhere in the Senate. We can either stand in our corners and advocate our position and not come to an agreement and then face a very serious end-of-the-year cliff effect with both the taxes and the defense sequester, or we can get down and make a deal. And anybody in the business world who's been involved in a negotiation like that, okay, one side says this, one side says that, fine, let's find a compromise. And my proposal is, if you let the tax cuts expire over $500,000 so that everybody's income gets no increase in taxes for the first $500,000, you raise between $500 and $600 billion in revenue over the decade. And if you do that, then you can really soften the proposed defense sequester cuts and save Virginia jobs. So the time for the show votes is over. The time for the stating our position that we know won't go with the other guys is over. Let's find a path forward that will get us to balance.
Governor, would you be advocating taking the revenue that would come in to the U.S. Treasury vis-a-vis not extending the Bush tax cuts to those earning over $500,000, taking those dollars and then putting that in the Department of Defense so that we can stop sequestration?
I would propose to significantly reduce the defense cuts. Now, I will say this, John. Even Secretary Panetta has said we can find savings in defense, and we ought to be challenged. If we're dealing with a deficit, we ought to be challenged to find savings just like everybody else. And I think that is important. And so I would not say necessarily that you take the $5 to $600 billion and just hand it all to the DOD. I think you still have to challenge DOD to find savings, and you have to challenge others to find it too. But if you have $5 to $600 billion, the entire defense sequestration cut is $500 billion. So if you do this Bush tax cut, let them expire over 500, you've raised more than enough to cover the defense sequester, and I think you can do some combination of reduce the potential defense cuts, reduce the cuts on the non-defense side, and then put a little bit of it to deficit reduction as well.
Governor, final question. Let's move, if we can, to foreign policy and the deteriorating situation in Syria.
Yep.
Governor, what do you think the U.S. involvement in Syria should be, if any?
Well, I think our involvement should be involvement with a group of nations. I don't think the U.S. should be in there on our own. I think we should be working with other nations on the Security Council and in the Arab League to try to promote the transition from Assad to a different government, because he's clearly demonstrating that he's committing all these abuses against his own people. And I think the consensus of nations is he really ought to go. But we can't do it on our own. We've got to work with others. That's my first point. The second point is, if we commit any military assets, it should not happen without a vote of Congress. I'm going to be a real stickler, John, when I go to the Senate, if I'm fortunate enough to be elected, that a president should not be committing military assets and the United States, financial backing into military situations without Congress's vote. sometimes the president has to act on an emergency basis right away, and I get that. But then let's bring that to Congress and put Congress on the board. I don't think there's anything that's more important for members of Congress to have to vote on than to whether to commit the American military. And so that would be the second thing I would say. We act in concert with other nations, and when we act, if we're putting our military troops, whether they're on the ground or whether they're flying air missions, if we're putting our military troops in harm's way, the president should come to Congress about it.
Governor, we want to thank you for joining us, and we'll look forward, Governor, to having you back on the show. And just quick aside, on August 13th, we're expanding to Richmond, and then on September 5, our show will be in D.C. Metro and Northern Virginia as well, so you'll be able to tune us in every day wherever you are.
That's great. I'm in the car a lot, so I'll look forward to listening, and I'll look forward to being back on to talk to you, John.
Well, all right, sir. Thank you.